Hello and welcome to EduCurious, where we highlight exceptional educators and dive deep into complex issues. Today's guest is Justin Sharpless, Agriculture Department Chair and Assistant Professor at Warner University, and also our Polk County School Board District 6 representative. He's also a Lake Wales native. So welcome to the show, Justin. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this interview because we share a lot of things in common with our history growing up in Lake Wales, and you are back working in your community and making a difference. So tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe some things that we don't already know and some things you're passionate about.
I am born and raised here in Lake Wales. I went to Hillcrest Elementary, McLaughlin Middle School, and Lake Wales High School. So I'm a proud graduate, Highlander class of 2002. Well, I'm really excited, to be back here in my community. I left only for a little bit to go off to school, and I came back. And one thing that drew me back is I want to make a difference, in our community here. Growing up here, it definitely was instilled in me to give back. I think about things like the Lake Wales Care Center, stay-at-home work camps, school organizations and clubs like the FFA and other great organizations in school just really put that desire in me to give back to my community. So I'm very glad in all my roles here. I grew up here, but also I married a Lake Wales native as well, Emily Sharpless. So she's a agriculture teacher here in the Lake Wales charter school system. We have 3 small boys. Wyatt's 7, and he's going into 2nd grade now. I have a 4-year-old named Rhett and a 1-year-old named Garrett. My parents went through the school system here as well. My in-laws did, so we're vested in this community.
I want to hear a little bit about your role at Warner University. You are helping make a difference and guiding younger people, that next group of career-driven individuals, helping them on their path to figuring out what they want to do in life. So speak on that for us.
In my role as department chair at Warner University, I have all the administrative duties, but also I still have the teaching responsibilities, and it's something I'm passionate about, staying in the classroom. Part of my teaching responsibility is I'm in charge of our internship program and connecting students to real world experiences out in the industry. I have students come in and some students come in and they just know, hey, I want to be in the agriculture industry. And I say, okay, well, let's see what that looks like. And we, through our classes and our different internship opportunities, we kind of pare that down. Other students, I remember one student came in and she was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. I'm like, okay, that's great. Let's get you some experiences. Then she started getting some experiences. And by the time she graduated, she was employed in food safety and more of a like environmental. So it was interesting. So some students think they know what they want to do, and some students, I had others that came in and they said this is what they want to do, and they get experience in it and they stick with it. So it's fun for me to really see the progression coming in as freshmen or juniors, depending, and then leaving gainfully employed. We have a great placement rate within our department here. Students that come in and get an ag degree, they've got great job security because everyone likes to eat. It's kind of one of those required things. So we definitely, it's a passion of mine, helping students connect to their careers.
And you leveled up just recently. You decided to take on a very selfless act to be a board representative in our Polk County School District, which is a huge district. And you are giving of your time. It's a stressful job, and there's lots of decisions that go on behind the scenes that maybe we're not privy to. So tell us a little bit about that role and how you're making a difference in education in that district seat.
So whenever my oldest son was born, I started, I was working at Warner University. I felt like I was making an impact here at the college level. And I just had a tug on my heart that, hey, Justin, this Polk County school system really impacted you, and it set you on a trajectory professionally to where you are today. So you need to start giving back. We had a kid that's going to go through the school system. Why don't you try to make a difference? Try to help support it and also help advance it. And so I reached out to my school board representative at that time, Mr. Lynn Wilson, and I chatted with him and I said, hey, I don't know what it looks like. I just want to help give back. And now, as a school board member myself, I know when a constituent calls you and says that, like, hey, we got to get them plugged in somewhere. He did. He put me on a committee. It's called the Attendance Boundary Committee. And so we looked at, when a new school popped up, how we were going to shift the attendance boundaries for that school. because in Polk County Public Schools, if a kid moves into our district, we're required to educate them. And depending on where they move into, that's what school they are assigned. I'm an advocate for school choice, and because of school choice, parents can make the best decisions for their kids and send them other places. But we are required to assign them to a school based on their geographic residence. I was on that committee. A really neat thing about that is I got to learn about the pockets of growth in our county, where our county was growing the most. I'm going to tell you, it's exploded in the northeast part of our county. It's just a tremendous amount of growth there. Basically, Davenport, Haines City, Poinciana, that whole area is basically a bedroom community to Disney World now in Orlando. And so it's just amazing the growth up there. I served on that committee, and then I guess I did a good job because Mr. Wilson then decided to appoint me to the superintendent search committee. So I was one of 30 something citizens across Polk County that reviewed 52 applications for superintendent of Polk County Public Schools. And we weeded that list down for the school board members, obviously with our input. And so eventually, with the hiring of Superintendent Fred Hyde, while I was doing that, I started really engaging in the school board meetings, watching them online, and finally a light bulb went off. Said, Justin, you could do that. You could do that. You have training. I'm a past state FFA officer in a fraternity and college student government. And so I reached out to the board member Wilson and I said, I'm not going to run against you because I have a lot of respect for him. And I still have a lot of respect for him. I said, I will never run against you, but just let me know when you don't want to do this anymore. And I'm willing to step up to the plate. And then he called me and said, hey, I'm not going to file for reelection. And I said, okay, I'll file. I'll get started. Of course, I had to talk to my wife about this and my family. I had to pray a lot about it first. I felt when I called him and told him I'd be willing to do it, I felt pretty called and willing. That's kind of where we're at today.
You have such charisma and such a positive attitude. Talk about how you're able to look for the good in things. I haven't heard you complain once. You've said, all right, I can get in and I can make a difference, instead of sitting there and being like, this isn't going well. This isn't going well. What drives that?
My faith drives that. When you realize how blessed you are to be where you are, I've got a family that supports me. Overall, I'm a very positive person because the impact that my faith's had on me, my family's had on me, my community's had on me. I was born, to a single mom. My dad's been a part of my life for my whole life. I've got a great family support, but seeing the good in humanity certainly helps you to stay positive. I've had amazing teachers, mentors. Personally, one of my biggest mentors is Mr. Milton Bryan. He was the high school agriculture teacher at Lake Wales High School and invested in a sophomore that kind of had no idea what I was going to do in my life. I was always a smart kid. I had great grades, but no career aspirations. I didn't know what to do. Like I joined agriculture class. I fell in love with it. And him investing in me as a teacher, I can owe my entire professional development to our education system. So that will help keep me positive.
Although you're not serving as a board member in charter, you are so involved in all of the charter initiatives because you're vested. You've got kids here, your wife teaches here. Tell me some of the things that you're hopeful for this new leadership to move towards.
The Polk County Public Schools has a relationship with Lake Wales Charter Schools, and that's because we're the authorizers. We vote on the charters for Lake Wales Charter Schools. We vote on each individual school, whether that's a conversion charter or startups like both Bach Academies. We vote on them and certainly been very supportive. And so one of my goals, even when I ran for school board and elected in 22, one of my goals was to foster a collaborative relationship between Polk County Public Schools and Lake Wales Charter Schools. I've got a second grader that's in Lake Wales Charter School system. Both my other boys attend preschool in Lake Wales Charter School system. My wife teaches in it. My mother-in-law just retired from it. I'm a graduate of Lake Wales High School. I care about our community and the education of all the kids in our community, whether that's private school kids, or that's Lake Wales Charter School kids, or Polk County Public Schools. Certainly, I would love for Lake Wales Charter Schools to have a world-class education, the system to be thriving and healthy, for the teachers to feel heard, the students to excel in the offerings that they're already great offerings, but just to enhance them even more. You've got a good board. I work with one of them here at Warner University, and so I've got good relationships with some of your board members. I would like to have good relationship with all of them. I know that you're in good hands, and I'm excited for this new superintendent. I truly am. There's going to be some great things coming from Lakeville Charter Schools.
Do you have any ideas about how we can enhance the collaborative aspect that you mentioned?
The first thing is making sure that, there's a collaborative relationship between the two superintendents. That's where it starts. That's where district culture starts. So making sure that, there's some collaborative meetings between her and Superintendent Hyde, certainly facilitating that, asking for that. I'm one of 7 bosses for Superintendent Hyde, so I get to have his ear every once in a while. So definitely asking him, hey, can we have a meeting, me, him, and the new superintendent for Lake Wells Charter Schools, seeing ways that we can support each other. My leadership style is always someone that I seek to listen first. I always say God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's to listen twice as much as we talk, and so I like to hear from both sides. And when I started this gig as a school board member, I did a listening tour where I went around to different communities and I listened to stakeholders, and that's what I would want to do with the new superintendent and Superintendent Hyde. What kind of goals do you have? How can the Polk County school system, help you facilitate those goals? People try to say we're in competition, but competition's healthy. If one's improving schools, the other's going to improve schools too. Why? Because they want to attract more students. Families choose where to send their kids. And I think that's healthy. If Polk County Public Schools can help Lake Wells Charter Schools, and vice versa, that would be a good thing. So let's get them both in the room and let's start chatting on how we could be collaborative. I don't want to push my narrative too much because, again, it's not about me. It's about what's best for systems.
What are some challenges that you've noticed around here? You mentioned growth exploding. What are some other things that you are preparing for and making sure you're informed on when you come to the board meeting with ideas and solutions?
If you read the Lakeland Ledger here recently, we projected some financial hardships in our district. Certain federal funds have been withheld or frozen, even state funds, specifically with the scholarship. They underprojected the amount of scholarships that would be used to send students to private schools and homeschools. What we're seeing at the district is the overprojection is mostly on the homeschool end, that the state has to do a better job of projecting those numbers. And the reason why the underprojection affects us is because they set a cap at how much funds in the education budget, and the scholarships to go to private schools, which again I fully support. Initially, we were told we were going to be held harmless at the district. They said, okay, well, we have a hold harmless fund that's going to absorb this. They underprojected that, and so they basically said, well, we can't release those funds out because we've already used them for the scholarships. And we found families were double dipping. They would use the scholarship and then also send their kids to public schools, and we're not receiving funds for that because the scholarship money was already used. So there's some simple solutions for that, which I'll be advocating for in when I go to Tallahassee. I do it a few times each session, as well as I've relationships with legislators here back in the district. I highly suggest for everyone watching, contact your local legislator, develop a relationship with them, so that way when you get issues that come up like this, you can advocate. A couple solutions that we've thrown around. First, have some sort of identifier for students that are on the scholarship. So that way we know when they come back to public school and we can prorate that. So let's say they went half a school year at the private school and then they come back to public school, and and charter is the same way because you get your FTE just like the public school system. So charter would be impacted by this as well. So they half a school year at, like I said, private school, and they come back, then we would receive half of that voucher money to help educate that kid. I think overall that will help the system just be able to thrive. Because what right now we're doing, we are not cutting any staff. We don't want to do that yet. We have enough in reserves and stuff to where we can do that for this next school year. But unless things change, then the following we'll have to make some really tough decisions. I'm a fiscally conservative person who want to make sure that we stay on budget and want to make sure that we're not going in the red. But I'm also a former middle and high school teacher, and I certainly have a heart for our education system. So those two parts tug at me at times, which it's always difficult when it comes with funding. Growth is a big issue. How we adjust for that, we're just going through a comprehensive rezone. In fact, at our work session, we're going to be presented the high school rezoning. So we had an efficiency audit come in. You might have heard things like Doge at the national level, but we had a private one of those come in. Business leaders, and business consultants came into our school district at Polk County Public Schools, and we said, hey, here's everything. Tell us where we can become more efficient. We want to be better. And so one of the areas that came out of that was our schools are not properly utilized. One school's at 50% capacity, and another one's at over 100%, busting the seams with portables. And so how do we address that? And so we have to address that through a comprehensive rezone. And so we start at the high school level because that's the easiest one. We will not force any kid to leave a school. If they're at the school currently, we're not going to zone them out. This is for students that would come into the schools. So we start with that. There's not as many high schools as well as their bigger geographic regions. And also, I will tell you, high school parents aren't as emotionally invested for the most part. When kids are little, parents get really I get it. We start at that high school level because it's the easiest. Then we'll go down to middle school. We also want to be cognizant of feeder patterns as well and rezone those schools to where we can utilize them better. Now, of course, that comes with school choice, so parents can move around. The school choice is only there if there's availability and seats in those schools. And so when we comprehensively rezone, it will help that. And that's going to be something that, not everyone's going to like. It's not going to be popular, but it's something we have to do to where we can become more financially stable, more efficient, certainly, in how we use our facilities. And at the end of the day, I just want to help our school systems. People come up to the dais, and very rarely do they come up there and tell us we're doing a great job. Those people don't come to the meetings. Like, most time when I get a phone call, it's because someone's upset. As a professional, you just have to understand that people aren't going to call you and tell you you're doing a great job. They're going to call when they're upset and when they want change. I listen. I'm empathetic, and I have thick skin, literally and figuratively. So that's how I get to that.
I want to hear a little bit about your educational journey through our system. It was before we became officially a charter school system, and then maybe a little bit about your college and how it made you who you are today.
Born in Bartow, and after a few days, I started in Lake Pierce area. That's where where my grandmother lives and my mom lived out there. I went to school at Dundee Elementary for K through 3. And then my mom moved into Lake Wales proper, close to the lake. And I was zoned into the Hillcrest Elementary School. And so I went 4th and 5th at Hillcrest. And then I went to McLaughlin when there was teams, and I was in that school within a school. And then I moved up to Lake Wales High School. When I was in 1st grade, they tested me for gifted, and I was always in gifted classes. I went to Lake Wales High School in honors classes, and I always identified as a gifted student. And then I was just high performing. And that when I graduated Lake Wales High School, I took a gap year before gap years were cool, and I served as a state FFA officer. I traveled around the state. I represented Polk County, Orange, and Osceola was really our district, but I was a state officer, so I did everything around the state and went to the National FFA Convention. I didn't really realize at the time, but it helped prepare me to be a school board member because I learned parliamentary procedure. I learned politics at a young age, especially when you're up there at the National FFA Convention. You're a delegate and trying to get things passed. It really prepared me well. When I graduated, and after that gap year, I attended the University of Florida. Go Gators. Truly enjoyed my time there. Joined an agriculture fraternity, really a big part of my development. I was a student senator in the student government up there, and a member of Florida Blue Key, which is the leadership honorary up there. Made some lifelong friends. My wife and I had a big wedding, and I had 9 groomsmen. She had 9 bridesmaids. That was a big one, and 5 out of the 9 were fraternity brothers of mine. Of all my groomsmen. It was a big part of my life, and it's something that I truly enjoyed, and it's something that I made some lifelong friendships in. And honestly, a lot of those people are professionals in the agriculture industry now, and it served me well. A big part of why I joined that fraternity was my high school agriculture teacher, Milton Bryan. He was a state FFA officer. He went to the University of Florida, and he was a member of Alpha Gamma Rho, my fraternity, AGR, we call it. And then after I graduated, I came back to Polk County. I graduated my bachelor's and master's from University of Florida. Came back to Polk County, and I was recruited back by another one of my mentors, David Bird, a former Polk County agriculture teacher specialist here. He recruited me back, and I taught at Fort Meade High School, middle senior high school. I was an agriculture teacher there. And then my high school ag teacher, Mr. Bryan, came back to education after being retired. And me and him went through new teacher training together at Polk County Public Schools because as he came back, they required him to do that. And so I was at Fort Meade Middle Senior High School. And then at that time, was the recession of 2010-ish, and the school budget was cut. And at a middle senior high school, there was 2 ag teachers, and they said, well, we have to cut units, and so we can cut to 1 ag teacher, and that ag teacher can teach middle and high school. I was the low man on the totem pole. I was told, hey, we're going to have to cut your position, not because of performance, but because of our budgetary issues. And I said, okay. At that same time, Mr. Bryan said, hey, I'm getting ready to leave McLaughlin in retirement. I was just trying to help them for a couple years there to establish the program back. And I said, okay. And so he recruited me to come to McLaughlin. So I taught there. I loved the 8th graders there, and their ag teacher moved at Lake Wales High School, and they recruited me to come up to the high school with them. The 8th graders did, and so I taught there as well. So I taught at Fort Meade Middle Senior, I taught at McLaughlin, and I taught at Lake Wales Senior. Something I tell my students all the time is to make sure you make good impressions on your professors while you're in college, because one of my old professors called me back and said, hey, Justin, I've been keeping tabs on you. And I said, okay, it's a little big brother-ish. I'm a little like, okay, but she said, I'm hearing you're a great ag teacher, and I want you to consider teaching future ag teachers, being a teacher educator. And I said, okay, what does that entail? To talk to me about it. And so she recruited me up to the University of Missouri, where I received a master's degree, and I'm currently in the doctoral program too. I had a citizen of Lake Wales call me, Doris Dukage, and she said, hey, Justin, I know you're from here. We have an opening in our ag program at Warner. We need a good professor. And she recruited me to come back to Lake Wales. It was a no-brainer for me to come back to my home community. When I left to go to the University of Missouri, I thought, there's no way I'll ever be back here. And it was kind of sad because I love Lake Wales. I love Southeast Polk County in general. Lake Wales, Frost Proof, that whole area, Babson Park. I love this area, but at that time, when I left, Warner University didn't have an ag program. My grandpa graduated from Warner University. If Warner would have had an ag program back then, I probably would have went to Warner, even over the University of Florida, because of family ties. But there was no ag program. So I thought, well, I'm going to leave and I'll never be back. And so whenever Doris called me, that was a full circle moment. Coming back here, I've been teaching at Warner University for 10 years. When I talked to my grandpa, it's great. My grandpa was the first graduating class back in 1972. There were 4 of them, and I talked to him about the good old days of whenever they were across the Highway 27, and it was, just amazing things happening. And I know it's special for my grandpa too that I'm here, just because he can see something that he was part of, took a risk on it. He took a risk to be here because when your school's starting up and they're working on credentials, they're getting everything. When you're in the first class of something, you're really taking a risk on the university. And for him to be able to see that paying off and his grandson teaching here and leadership here, that's certainly that's special and something that I can't really buy. Money can't buy that.
What advice do you have to kids, young adults considering teaching as a career? And what advice do you have to the new teachers that are just stepping foot in the classroom? Because all of that is a little bit scary.
Go somewhere, take risks. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So get some experience. And then if opportunities arise, you can always go home. Like, don't be afraid to go away, right? Get experiences, live, because you're going to make mistakes, but also you're going to learn new things. Selfishly, as a school board member, I say, come back to Polk County somewhere, but then you can always go back to your home community. You learn new things, you learn new ways of doing things, and you can bring those back to make it better. Just like I tell my students in the ag industry, even the ones that come from family farms that are going to go back to family farms, when you come to college, your parents sent you here, so that way you can learn to do things better and go back and improve things. Same thing in the educational system. If you surround yourself in an echo chamber, just experiences that you've had in your K through 12 experience, if you have the same experiences in college, certainly there's some positives that come with that. The more educational systems and more schools and things like that you can be exposed to, the better. So that's the first thing. Like, don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to do something different, and don't be afraid to move around, because you'll learn more. The second piece of advice for teachers that are in the classroom, maybe their first time stepping foot in the classroom, remember that you're not going to be an expert day one. Stay at least 1 to 2 weeks ahead of the class you're teaching, so that way you don't seem like you don't know anything. But one of the most powerful things that ever happened to me in education was I asked a question one time, and the teacher said, I don't know. but I'm going to find the answer and I'm going to come back to you. That to me, that shows that they're a real person. When you see them out in public, that's your teacher still, yes, but they're a real person. They have a family. They connect, and they don't think everything. So being honest, I also tell them to start, especially in my neck of the world, agriculture teachers. There's classroom that you have to teach in the classroom. There's your laboratories, whether that's a greenhouse, that's a animal facilities, a welding shop, whatever that is. There's also FFA. And so I would also translate that to other teachers too. Let's say you're a social studies teacher and you're also the sponsor for student government. That would be a good connection there. Remember that your number one role is that classroom. The extracurriculars are great, and that's how you can build some great relationships with your students. But remember, that's why you got hired, was to teach in that classroom. Sometimes our teachers get so focused on other areas that they forget that, and that's when they get in trouble with administration when they do a walkthrough or something like that. Is remember, hey, you're a teacher first. Without being a teacher, then you're not a club sponsor. You're not a other areas. And specifically for ag teachers, I would say if any future ag teachers watching this or current ones, you're not going to win 20 contests year one. Like pick something, try it out, and get better at it. And I would say for other teachers as well, every time you master something, add something new that you're trying to get better at. But don't try to master everything at once because you're not going to do it. Last piece of advice I would say, and this is from my own failures as a teacher starting out, I wanted to be liked by students. Because I was an elective, I wanted students to like me so they would sign up for my class. Because to me, if you don't have the student enrollment, then yeah, you're probably not going to be a teacher for long in electives. But with that, I got too laxed on classroom management. Students like you, and that like can come from respect, and that respect comes from having a solid classroom management. I'm not saying my classes were free for alls, certainly by any means, but I felt like I was too lax on some things. It's always easier to lighten up your classroom management and your, I would say, strictness level. It's harder to clamp down. So make sure when you're first starting out, be a solid teacher. You're going to feel like you're drowning every day. Just get that breath of air before you go back under. And remember, classroom management's key. Those would be my pieces of advice for new teachers.
What are some of the resources that you stay plugged into right now? Because you just gave advice on making sure you're learning something new, adding to your repertoire. How are you learning something new these days?
So how I become a better board member, other than listening to the community, that's a big part of it. I'm actually wearing the polo right now. You can see here, the Florida School Board Association. I actually was just elected this summer as the treasurer for this upcoming year. So I'm one of 5 executive officers that represent the state of Florida and all the school board members. And so the Florida School Board Association helps me to keep up with my professional development. They have seminars on things like school finance, which is an important one right now. Policy and governance. We have a new school board member training when people first start out. We have all sorts of different kind of trainings, even bargaining and what the school board members' role in bargaining. So you don't have this in Lake Wales charter schools, but in Polk County public schools, we have to bargain with our unions on setting salary schedules. The Polk Education Association represents teachers as well as paraeducators, clinical office staff. We have an organization that represents bus drivers and custodial. So we basically have to bargain with all these different organizations and unions. There's professional development. I became a Florida School Board Association certified board member. That's after 96 hours of professional development in specific targeted areas. So I'm very involved in that organization. I always suggest that teachers and education staff and our school staff get involved in their professional organizations. My wife's a member of the Florida Association of Career Technical Educators, as well as the Florida Association of Agriculture Educators. She serves on the board of FFA. I serve on other boards. Keeping up in agriculture. I'm also on the Polk County Youth Fair Board, so staying involved in our agricultural youth. Professionally, I like to read and listen to some podcasts, whether that's on government or even in the livestock industry and showing. There's a Beyond the Ring podcast I listen to that talks about livestock shows. I listen to their podcast to hear state policies, specifically ones that are talking about accountability and school choice and things like that. I like listening to podcasts because I drive around a lot visiting schools, and I can just listen to that podcast. I'm going from one school to the other or dropping off my kids at school. I try to keep up professionally in different organizations and podcasts.
You've done so much in your lifetime and you've got so much ahead of you. What are some of your proudest moments or greatest accomplishments?
When I was elected to state FFA office as a high school senior, it's kind of full circle now because one of my wife's students goes to my church, and I'm involved with his family, and he was actually just elected to state FFA office. So one of your former Bach Knights, Clayton Keene, was elected, and so it's kind of cool. He's elected the same position I was. So that's really neat though, to see that. And it's one of the things I've done with that is because I'm passionate about the state officer program. At Warner University, I've developed a institute. It's called the Warner University State Officer Preparation Academy. We call it WUSOP. And so what I do is I have high school juniors and seniors. These are the elite of the elite from around Florida. FFA members come in, and we do a intensive one-day training to prepare them for the screening process, because they have to go through a screening, and then that's when they select the top two from each area and they get elected. But I don't teach them about the politics side of it. I teach them about how do I perform the best at the screening to help me get to become a candidate. We do an intensive one-day training on that, where they come in and we give them instruction, and then we also give them opportunity to practice that instruction. As part of my fraternity, I was awarded the Grand President's Award. That was a few years ago. And that's for younger members and alumni. It's 40-something and younger that have given contributions to the agriculture industry, and mine was through agriculture education, obviously. So that was really a big part of my fraternity recognizing me at the national level. That was really important for me. Outstanding alumni for Florida, as well as one of the top 3 in the nation for FFA. That was a big one for me. Obviously, school board, getting elected as a countywide school board member, being elected as the treasurer of the Florida School Board Association, all important. And going back to college, I would say becoming a member of Florida Blue Key was big too. So a lot of accomplishments, and I don't like bragging about myself. I certainly don't, but I think it's important to recognize those. And I appreciate you asking me, because if a kid that was born to a single mom in Lake Wales, grew up lower middle class, was able to do that, then I think it gives hope to other kids out there. And so that's really what's important to me.
So, Justin, are there any final thoughts that maybe I didn't get a chance to ask that you want to share before we end?
Throughout all these different things that I've done in life, I've done a decent job of prioritizing. I would definitely say for younger teachers as well, um, and people in the industry, you have to be able to have a solid foundation and then prioritize from that. I'm going to give you an example. I was asked to go to something as a school board member, but I was asked to go to an event, and it was the same night as my son's championship t-ball game. It was a rather important event that I was going to go to, but I sat down and thought, it's only one time for my son to be in his first t-ball championship ever, and so I said, those other events will have to wait. And so I try my best to be a representative for our community in that, but I have to remember the reason why I started this whole thing. I want to make a great educational system for my kids, and I'm not going to sacrifice them or my wife or my family for that. And so make sure that you stay grounded. I remember the piece of advice my dad gave me when I first got elected. He said, "Don't forget why you were elected and who elected you." But that's not just the elected official side. It's also when we're teaching. A lot of times our teachers, they get burned out because they invest so much into their craft, but they forget about they're a person too, right? And they have a family. I would say this: earlier on in your career, you have to invest more time, right? However, there's generally earlier on in your career, you're younger and you don't have established family as much yet, and so you have a little more free time. And this is just for traditional, I would say, the traditional path. But you can't forget about those people that are at home, and you can't forget that you have many roles, and some roles have to come before others. And so, like for me, I'm a Christian first. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Those things come before department chair at Warner University. They come before school board member. They become before FBSBA treasurer, Polk County Youth Fair Board. All of that comes after being a Christian, a husband, and a father. And so make sure to keep your priorities in line. A lot of the other things will fall into place, and time management to get all that done.
What's your normal day start at these days?
I get up, I'm checking emails, I'm making sure fires are kind of put out, and then it's me and my wife tag teaming getting the kids ready. Then it's out the door. I generally do drop off and pick up because my wife has obviously as a teacher has a very specific bell schedule. We live close to Warner and Bach because well, it makes sense. It's where we work. And so we live close to there. And so I drive the kids to drop offs. At one point we had 3 drop offs. Now we have 2. I'm very thankful for that. I'm dreading the day, and there'll be 3 years of my life where I have a high school, middle school, and elementary school student. That's going to be fun. And also, I did the math for 10 years of my life. I'm going to have a high school student, an whole decade. Typical day, I drop the kids off Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I have a pretty heavy teaching load at Warner University, and so I'm teaching here Tuesday, Thursdays, I have more events for school board, things like that. I try to balance that out along with nights and weekends, of course. But all of the school board meetings are on Tuesdays. I try to do my school visits on Tuesdays and Thursdays as much as possible. So I try to balance that out along with being available to Warner University whenever on Tuesdays and Thursdays if they need me to. So that's kind of how I do that. And then we pick up and we come home and we go to bed and do it over again the next day. I'm very blessed in my life. I'm blessed to have all these roles. I'm happy. And so if I was not busy, then I would probably be miserable. So there's that too.
Thank you for sharing your time, your precious time with us this morning, and for fitting us into your really busy schedule. I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me talk to you. I've truly enjoyed this. It's great to talk to a fellow Lake Wales High School graduate, and hail to the Highlanders.
So whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. We'll see you next time.